I was standing near the center of the ballroom when Kang Jae-hyun laughed at me. It was not loud, but it was sharp enough to cut through the music. Conversations around us slowed. Heads turned. I felt the air change. "So this is the woman," he said, his voice calm and cruel. "Who thinks she belongs here?" People stared. Some smiled. Some looked away. I did not move. I had learned long ago that silence could be stronger than shouting. I held my glass steady and met his eyes. He was taller than I expected, dressed in black, his face cold and controlled. This was the man who owned half of Seoul's shadows. The Korean mafia boss everyone feared. I said nothing. That seemed to bother him more. "You Africans are brave," he continued, speaking like he was amused. "Brave enough to forget your place." A few men laughed. Someone shifted uncomfortably. My heart beat hard, but my back stayed straight. "You invited me," I replied calmly. "I came." His smile faded. Just for a second. I felt it then. The tension. The warning. This was no normal insult. This was a test. And I had already passed the first part. The silence came suddenly. Too suddenly. The men around Kang Jae-hyun stopped smiling. One by one, they lowered their eyes. A server froze beside me, her hands shaking. Jae-hyun noticed it too. His jaw tightened as he looked around the room. He had expected laughter, fear, maybe tears. He had not expected respect. I felt it before I understood it. Something had shifted in my favor. "You should leave," Sujin said sharply as she stepped forward. Her white dress shimmered under the lights, her smile tight and angry. "This event is not for people like you." I turned to her slowly. "Your name was on the guest list," I said. "Mine was too." Her eyes flashed. "Do you know who you're speaking to?" "Yes," I answered. "And I know who I am." That was when Jae-hyun raised his hand. The room went completely still. "No one tells her to leave," he said quietly. Sujin stared at him. "Jae-hyun." I said no one. His eyes locked onto mine. I expected anger. What I saw instead was interest. Sharp. Dangerous. For the first time that night, the man who mocked me looked unsure. And I knew this was far from over. I should have walked away. Every smart voice in my head told me to leave the room, leave the building, leave the city if I had to. But I stayed. Jae-hyun dismissed the others with a look. Slowly, the crowd drifted back into forced laughter and fake smiles, pretending nothing had happened. "You're calm," he said to me. "Most people shake." "I've shaken enough in my life," I replied. His lips twitched. "You don't know what kind of man I am." "I know exactly what kind of man you are," I said. "You insult people in public so they feel small." That did it. His eyes darkened. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Expensive. Controlled. Like him. "You should fear me," he said softly. "I don't," I answered, even though my hands were cold. Behind him, Sujin watched us, like a storm ready to break. "You will regret tonight," she said. Maybe she was right. But as Jae-hyun stared at me, I realized something dangerous. He wasn't angry anymore. He was curious. And curiosity, in a man like him, was far more deadly. He summoned me 2 days later. The message was short, polite, impossible to refuse. When I arrived at his private office overlooking the Han River, every step felt measured. Guards stood like statues. Power lived in those walls. "You embarrass me," Jae-hyun said after dismissing everyone else. "I spoke the truth," I replied. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Do you know what happens to people who challenge me?" "I know what happens to people who bow," I said. Silence stretched between us. "You're not afraid," he said. "I'm careful," I corrected. That made him smile. A real one this time. It unsettled me more than his mockery. "You could be useful," he said. "Or you could be crushed." I met his gaze. "I don't belong to you." "No," he agreed slowly. "That's the problem." For the first time, I saw something human in him. Conflict. Desire. Control slipping. Outside, Seoul moved like nothing was wrong. Inside, I felt the underworld watching. And I knew whatever this was, it had already gone too far. Sujin confronted me that evening. She waited outside my apartment, her expression sharp and certain. "You think you've won something," she said. "I didn't compete," I replied. "You don't understand him," she snapped. "He destroys what he can't control." I believed her. That scared me. "Then why are you scared?" I asked. Her silence answered me. "You're a phase," she said finally. "And phases end badly." That night, my phone buzzed. A message from Jae-hyun. "Be careful who threatens you." My chest tightened. Protection or warning, I couldn't tell. I looked out at the city lights and understood the truth. The mockery was over. The game had begun. The next day, I received an invitation I couldn't ignore. A private dinner at one of Jae-hyun's properties, modern, minimalistic, the kind of place that whispered power with every polished surface. I arrived early, feeling every eye in the room, even the ones that weren't there. Jae-hyun appeared from the shadows, his presence immediately filling the space. No announcement, no fanfare, just him and the weight of the empire he carried. "You came," he said, almost as if surprised. "I always do what I say," I replied. He studied me, as though weighing my worth. "Most people here would crumble under the pressure." "Maybe you should surround yourself with better people," I said, feeling bold. For the first time, a smile broke his stoic mask. A small one but genuine. Dinner was tense, a game of chess in every word. Sujin's name came up, a warning. "She'll make noise." "She always does," he said quietly. "I can't be anyone else's problem," I said firmly. "And yet, you are mine now," he replied, and for a moment, I understood the complexity. Power, desire, obsession, they were all tangled around us like invisible chains. By the end of the evening, the lines were clear. This wasn't flirtation. This was war, in the quietest, deadliest way imaginable. The next morning, the underworld whispered my name. I had no idea who was talking, only that the energy in the city shifted. Jae-hyun called. Short, precise. "Meet me." At his office, he didn't waste words. "You've been noticed," he said. "Not everyone survives being noticed." I met his gaze. "I've survived worse." And yet, he leaned forward, fingers brushing his desk. "You're walking into a world you don't fully understand." I wanted to ask what that meant, but before I could, his eyes softened for the briefest moment. A vulnerability I wasn't prepared for. Then the door opened. Sujin appeared again. Her eyes were knives, and she brought with her whispers of scandal, rumor, and threat. "You're overstepping," she said. "I'm here legally," I said, my voice firm. He didn't intervene at first. Watching him observe both of us, I realized something crucial. Jae-hyun's power wasn't just physical or financial, it was psychological. He controlled the room without moving a muscle. And yet, despite all that control, I could feel cracks forming. Curiosity, tension, and something else, desire, was leaking through. Weeks passed, each encounter escalating like a storm on the horizon. Every word we exchanged was loaded, every glance measured. One evening, at a high-stakes meeting, Sujin tried to assert influence again, whispering to key players about my improper conduct. Jae-hyun's reaction was subtle but undeniable. He interrupted, calmly dismantling her insinuations with authority and precision. I watched him from across the table, understanding more each second. The man who mocked me in public had just protected me in private. It wasn't affection yet, not fully, but it was respect. And respect, I realized, could be more dangerous than hatred. That night, walking home, I thought about the irony. I was terrified of him, yes, but I was also drawn to him in ways I hadn't expected. Fear, attraction, and uncertainty tangled inside me. And somewhere, deep down, I admitted that I wanted to understand him, not just survive him. But surviving him wasn't just about me. It was about navigating enemies I couldn't always see. Sujin, the whispers, the men who served him blindly. I wasn't naive. I knew power came at a price. But I was ready to pay it, or at least to find out how much it would cost. One rainy night, Jaehyun summoned me to the Han River docks. The lights reflected off the water, distorted and haunting. "I need to show you something," he said, voice low. I followed silently. There was tension in every step, like walking into a lion's den without knowing whether it would purr or strike. He led me to a car, black, sleek. Inside were files, secrets, transactions, evidence of things I wasn't supposed to know. "You don't understand everything yet," he said. "But you will. And knowing changes everything." I flipped through the files, my pulse quickening. This was the underworld, raw and unfiltered. And now I was a part of it whether I wanted to be or not. "Why show me this?" I asked. "Because," he said, eyes locking with mine, "I need someone I can trust. Someone strong enough to survive alongside me." For a moment, his armor cracked. Vulnerability. Reliance. Something human, buried beneath the dangerous persona. And I realized the truth. I was no longer an outsider. I was inside the storm. Days later, Sujin tried one final move. At a gala, she cornered me with a cruel smile. "You really think you can replace me?" she said. "I don't intend to replace anyone," I said, keeping my calm. "You're just a distraction. He'll tire of you soon." I looked at Jae-hyun across the room. His eyes found mine instantly. No hesitation, no amusement, just a quiet intensity. "You are wrong," he said later, pulling me aside. "She doesn't matter anymore." The underworld, once silent, now seemed to whisper differently. Respect, fear, and attention were focused on me. I realized then that the public mockery had ended not with humiliation, but with domination. Jae-hyun had acknowledged me, not just as a threat, but as an equal in a world built on fear and control. The tension didn't disappear. It simmered. But for the first time, I understood my place in it. I was safe, for now, under the gaze of the most dangerous man in Seoul. And I had survived. The following week, Jae-hyun invited me to his private office, this time without the pretense of meetings. The city lights stretched across Seoul like a glittering battlefield. "You've been thinking too much," he said quietly, leaning against the window. "About Sujin, about the whispers, about me." I folded my arms, refusing to show fear. Thinking keeps me alive in this world. He studied me for a long moment. "You're different from everyone else," he admitted, almost reluctantly. "Strong, brave, dangerous in your own way. That makes you interesting and unpredictable." The word hit me. Interesting. I wasn't a pawn, and he didn't see me as a toy. Then the first real smile appeared, soft, almost human, breaking through his dangerous exterior. I realized he had never smiled like that with anyone else. "But understand this," he continued, voice hardening. "Nothing is free. Being close to me has consequences. People will notice. People will challenge you. And you will have to fight, even when I am standing beside you." I nodded. I was ready. For the first time, I felt a strange sense of clarity. Survival wasn't just about avoiding danger. It was about walking alongside it and maybe, just maybe, learning to control it. Later that evening, the underworld shifted again. Whispers followed me through the streets, rumors crawling like shadows in alleyways. Sujin had not given up, and her allies were subtle but effective. I could feel them watching, waiting for a mistake. Jae-hyun appeared unexpectedly, stepping from the shadows beside me. "Do you feel it?" he asked. "The tension?" I replied. "No," he said, voice low. "The fear. Not theirs, but yours. They underestimate you. They underestimate me. Together, that makes us unpredictable." He guided me through the streets, each step deliberate, as if teaching me how to navigate a world where trust was rare and danger constant. I realized then that attraction wasn't just a spark, it was a weapon. His presence made me aware of every heartbeat, every instinct. When we finally parted that night, I knew something had shifted. I was no longer merely surviving. I was participating. I was learning, adapting, and in some strange, terrifying way, thriving. The underworld could mock me, threaten me, and whisper about me, but it no longer scared me. Not while he was in my corner. A week later, a confrontation was inevitable. Sujin cornered me at a gala, her gaze slicing through the crowded room. "You shouldn't be here," she said, tone laced with poison. I held her gaze steadily. "Neither should you." Jae-hyun arrived moments later, standing between us like a living wall of authority. "She's here because she belongs," he said quietly, yet everyone in the room felt the weight behind his words. Sujin's smile faltered. Her allies whispered, shifting uneasily. The atmosphere became electric. "You're playing a dangerous game," she said, her voice trembling. "And yet, it's the only game worth playing," I replied, keeping my voice calm. Jae-hyun's hand brushed briefly against my arm, not threatening, but possessive. I felt his strength, his power, and a strange comfort in it. By the end of the night, it was clear. Sujin had lost. Not with violence or confrontation, but through the quiet, undeniable shift in allegiance, attention, and control. For the first time, I felt the thrill of victory. Not mine alone, but ours, shared and fiercely claimed. The next day, I found myself in Jae-hyun's penthouse. Seoul stretched below, glittering like 1,000 stars captured in glass. "I want to show you something," he said, leading me to a private study. Inside were maps, dossiers, and plans, not just business but territory, alliances, and underworld influence. "You need to understand the scale of what you're involved in," he said. "If you misstep, people could die. If you succeed, we control everything." I felt a shiver, part fear, part exhilaration. "You're serious?" I said, my voice steady. "Always," he replied. His gaze lingered, intense and unwavering. "And I trust you more than anyone else. But trust comes with a price." We spent hours discussing strategy, boundaries, and expectations. I realized survival in his world required more than courage. It required cunning, observation, and unflinching loyalty. And despite the danger, I felt alive. Adrenaline and attraction intertwined, creating a tension I couldn't ignore. For the first time, I knew there was no going back. I had chosen this world, chosen him, and there was no path to safety except forward, together. A week later, the final confrontation arrived. Sujin, desperate, attempted to undermine our position publicly at another gala. "You're overstepping," she hissed, cornering me near the terrace. "I'm exactly where I belong," I said, unwavering. Jae-hyun appeared behind me, calm but radiating power. He didn't speak at first, letting his presence alone dominate the room. "You're finished," he said softly, so quietly that only she could hear. Yet everyone felt it. Every whisper stopped. Every gaze turned toward us. Sujin faltered, her allies shifting uneasily. Her confidence crumbled in an instant. I realized then what had happened. The mockery, the whispers, the public humiliation. It had all shifted. Jae-hyun had claimed control, and with him beside me, I was untouchable. The underworld went silent, and I knew I had survived not because I was alone, but because we had survived together. And for the first time, I allowed myself to believe in possibility, strength, power, and even love in a world that had seemed impossible to conquer. The next morning, I woke to a message I wasn't sure I wanted. "Meet me on the rooftop. 10 a.m. It was from Jae-hyun. I climbed the glass elevator to the top floor, nerves coiled tight. The city lay beneath me, Seoul sprawling like a chessboard, every light a potential threat or ally. He was already there, leaning against the railing, arms crossed, his face calm but unreadable. "You survived last night," he said without looking at me. "I did," I replied, voice steady, though my pulse raced. He turned, dark eyes locking on mine. "And you've learned something essential. Power respects those who understand it, not those who fear it." I nodded, realizing he was testing me, watching how I would respond. "For the next few days," he continued, "you'll see the world I've built. You'll see loyalty tested, rivals probing weakness, and alliances shifting like sand." I swallowed, feeling the weight of everything he implied. "And if you're still standing when it's done?" I asked. "Then," he said, his expression softening just slightly, "you'll understand why I brought you into this world. You're no longer just surviving. You're learning to rule." The thrill of possibility and danger surged through me, intoxicating and terrifying. The underworld didn't sleep. By mid-morning, I was already facing my first real test, a rival gang attempting to press territory near Jae-hyun's headquarters. He guided me to the observation deck above the streets.
"Watch.
Learn." I did. Every movement, every call he made, every subtle glance and command told a story of strategy and dominance. It was mesmerizing and terrifying. "You see," he asked softly, "control is never about brute force. It's about perception, timing, and the threat you carry in silence." I realized he had orchestrated every whisper, every rumor, every moment of fear to maintain dominance. And now he was showing me how to wield it. The rival gang backed off before the situation escalated. It was as if the mere presence of our calculated power made them hesitate. "You're ready to see more," Jae-hyun said, turning to me. "But remember, fear is a tool, not a weapon. Use it wisely." I nodded, determination mixing with adrenaline. This world was dangerous, but for the first time, I didn't feel powerless. That evening, Jae-hyun invited me to a private dinner. The city lights reflected in the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the room gold. He spoke little, but every word carried weight. "You've changed," he finally admitted. "Not just surviving anymore, but participating. Observing, calculating, adapting." I felt my pulse quicken, not just from danger, but from proximity. He leaned closer under the pretense of passing wine, and I could feel his intensity pressing against me. "I've tested you publicly," he said softly. "I've tested you privately. Every step has been about one thing, trust. And you've earned it." I swallowed, realizing the truth. This wasn't about romance, or not just. It was about power, control, and survival intertwined with desire. "I trust you," I said, quietly, meaning it in every sense. He smiled, brief but genuine. "Good. Because the night isn't over, and there's one more lesson left. Survival isn't enough. You have to dominate the fear before it dominates you." I leaned back, letting the words settle, understanding fully that in his world, strength and vulnerability were inseparable and dangerous. The following day, Sujin attempted one last maneuver, leaking false information to the press about Jae-hyun's alliances and my involvement. I was ready. I confronted her in a quiet lobby, away from cameras and crowds. "You've underestimated me," I said firmly. Her smirk faltered. "I doubt that," she replied, venom in her tone. Jae-hyun arrived seconds later, the room suddenly charged with his presence. "She's done," he said simply. It wasn't violence, it was certainty. The weight of his influence, combined with my own awareness, was enough to dismantle her plan.